Moving forward, I would like to request Mr. Bruno Dercon, Office in Charge of UN Habitat Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, to enlighten the audience with his valuable remarks.
Your Excellency, Minister of Urban Development, Mr. Secretary of the Ministry of Urban Development, Mr. Member Secretary of the National Planning Commission, distinguished guests and partners and friends from the Ministry of Urban Development and other institutions in Nepal, of course, together with the co-host, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLIT of Japan, with the Embassy of Japan here in Nepal. A special mention, glad for your support for this conference, to RUPSON, the Regional Urban Planners Society of Nepal. Very glad that we are here with the speakers from 15 countries, from Asia Pacific, Africa, and a colleague from headquarters who will also speak for our support in Central Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, here in the room, and for all those virtually connected, a very good morning, and on behalf of UN Habitat and UN Habitat's Regional Office for Asia Pacific and our team, UN Habitat Nepal here, I'm really glad to be part of the opening of the 5th Spatial Planning Conference. Urban and territorial planning supports sustainable development, supports the achievement of the SDGs with spatial visions, spatial strategies, spatial plans, and they need to be supported by planning policies, planning tools, and this all requires institutional and participatory mechanisms and regulatory procedures. And we know there is a lot of work in many countries, and it's never something that is finished, because the challenges renew themselves. When I started in 2005 for UN Habitat, urban planning was not in the strategic plan. There was no planning team. There was no urban planning guideline, perhaps with the exception of something about sites and services. And that's not so long ago. It's not yet 20 years. There had been, however, over the years already a campaign strongly on related issues of land and urban governance. And we keep that in mind because these issues are important in Nepal, are important in many countries. Fast forward, in 2014, the international guideline on urban and territorial planning was endorsed. This was promoted by UN Habitat. Was one of the co-sponsors was Japan. It was approved in New York by the General Assembly. It was enshrined in the new urban agenda, together with governance as one of the 2 key enablers to achieve sustainable urban development. So we came from 2005 with almost nothing, and just us as younger planners, together with planning associations across the world, to say, what's wrong here? And soon after, in 2014 and 15, with the new urban agenda, the issue of planning was again enshrined in the global guidance. As a result of that, Japan committed to start with a knowledge-sharing initiative, this spatial planning platform, to promote the guideline, to promote the knowledge and the practice of sustainable urban development through planning at all levels. UN Habitat developed many new initiatives in the wake of this. For instance, the Global Public Space Program at the lowest level of urban planning. The Global Future Cities Program, dealing with a lot of cities and investment issues. The Metro Hub program that deals with the contemporary key issues of metropolitan governance. Our promotion of national urban policies, one of the very successful initiatives that UN Habitat could guide with a number of member states in Asia Pacific, and notably with Korea, for instance, a strong emphasis on enshrining planning systems in national urban policies. In Asia Pacific, we started a new generation of Asia Pacific Cities report together with SCAP, and in 2019 we published that first one after Quito, after the new urban agenda, and it had then a standalone chapter on urban and territorial planning because it was seen as a key challenge for delivering the commitments of the new urban agenda in Asia Pacific. And that chapter, in its stock taking of all the innovation that was taking place, but also all the challenges, it recognized that there was an increasing planning capacity in almost all countries of Asia Pacific. And planning had become more affordable. When I started 35 years ago, planning was very expensive. The computers were expensive, the drafters were expensive, the data, the satellite or aerial photos were expensive. The statistics were scarce. It was all very difficult. Now it's more affordable. And there are more educated planners throughout Asia Pacific. Secondly, there is a much more national and subnational planning undertaken, often driven by key agendas such as environment and climate change. Planning results in countries that drive the issue of national resilience in the wake of disasters. Environmental commitments, as I said, climate strategies and commitments in NDCs. But having said that, there is across the region a very uncertain institutional and regulatory progress, and in all countries, even in countries where we think it's all strong and settled, that the planning system is already there and not much need to be done. It's very difficult to go along with new challenges. There is a lot of trial and error on the planning systems. Planning mandates are moving from this ministry to that ministry. The coordination issues remain very, very difficult. There is for sure insufficient vertical coherence and coordination. What we see often in conferences are nice plans. But behind that, there is not a reality of strong coordination, and especially vertical coordination between municipalities, local, intermediate levels like provinces, and national. There are still insufficient citywide strategies that are supported by planning. Comprehensive planning is, of course, well known as a discipline, but translating that systematically across programming and budgeting with a real practice of participation and citywide coordination through credible citywide strategies is really still trial and error. It's a patchwork of experiences. And finally, there is trial and error on that very important intermediate level of subnational or city region planning. We are here, I mentioned the future of the Asia Pacific Cities report in 2019, where for this region we did a stock taking, and we need to do that this year again for an update of that report. And we are here with my good colleague, Nolisa Hashim from Malaysia, who will coordinate the chapter on urban and territorial planning. So one of the benefits of this meeting is that this stock taking will be done with the participants of so many countries and with the Nepal experience. And we hope to have the recommendations for that in October for the Asia Pacific Urban Forum. But let me focus on subnational planning. It's a specifically important level of planning we see in so many Asia Pacific developing countries still, where spatial planner can still deliver unique benefits. First, it is an essential tool, given that it is more affordable, that evidence data, the planning production capacity is easier now. It's an essential tool for growth management. Urban expansion is still a reality. Of course, we want density, but urban expansion is still a simple reality for all developing countries, and spatial planning delivers in that important tool to help manage, build, plan cities and their expansion across administrative boundaries, to make cities and regions more productive, the economic function of planning, but also to make them more resilient, stand up to the many challenges that go along growth, to plan for the mobility and the energy benefits, the transport-oriented development provisions, as Japan successfully applied in the future, and other Asia Pacifics doing their retrofitting there too. At that level, that subnational planning, spatial planning is extraordinarily important, but also for coordination and governance. This horizontal and this vertical, the city-wide strategies, but also the city-region strategies. Spatial planning really helps coordination between administrations, between stakeholders, bringing agendas together, the green-blue agendas, the issues of urban and rural, the equity issues, also making sure the participation and the important issues between rich and poor, between wealthy and left behind. Now, the key requirements to deliver effective subnational territorial planning is a national planning system. And I mentioned in our stock taking of 2019, it's trial and error, it's a patchwork of provisions. It's still looking in many Asia Pacific countries whether ministries needs to be merged for that, or mandates have to be moved. The jury is out, but it needs work to be done. We need a national planning system, and we need planning capacity at all levels. The national spatial planning framework must be aligned to sustainable development goals, to the climate targets of countries, and it needs to be complemented with the national urban policy framework. Then planning law and planning capacity to deliver planning at all levels. I mentioned municipal planning management, not so much the products, that is one aspect, but the whole planning management. Planning capacity in municipalities to deliver evidence-based planning, coordination, the alignment with land management, and the differentiated functions of planners in municipal authorities, whether they are rural or urban. It needs different capacities. And these capacities need, therefore, to change when rural municipalities over time become urban. The metro planning between urban municipalities in order to come to comprehensive integrated development and development controls, to assist in arbitration and to support to adjudication with many planning conflicts and space conflicts that go along with urban growth. And finally, provincial planning management in support of policy, in support of evidence-based coordination, making vertical coordination and participation work. Planning consultants very typically deliver planning products, solutions, but not options, not choices. We need planners that support processes, that support decision-making and coordination. Of course, for the majority, if I think about planning students, young planners, planning companies, planning consultants. The real results and the bread and butter of planning is, of course, still in land development, in street development, in public space. It's also where the economics are of planning, where the volume is produced, but also where the quality can be achieved, where quality can be visible, where people can be made happy because of what they get as a result of planning, and where innovation is possible. It's a direct benefit to communities and people. And I wouldn't mind to advocate for an approach of incentives and penalties. From all that very local planning work that is done, make sure it achieves that quality by ensuring that enough street-based planning work is done by the public space design, but also like Japan and for instance, Hong Kong established, that one can give incentives to local planning to, for instance, achieve higher density. And we need higher density, we need higher agglomeration to make cities successful. We cannot go without that. Providing higher densities, if there are benefits to that in planning outcomes, you build in small contributions to the big engine of making cities more sustainable. Because in a lot of countries, what I've seen over the years is that the main planning work often of planning consultants is in the expansion, in tourism, in industry, and there are very few incentives for planners to contribute to make cities more dense and more productive. So we need to help to that, and into that process of planners being forced to deliver quality, they will also become more productive stakeholders in the citywide strategy development, in provincial or city region planning, and in national spatial planning. We really need them as specialists around the table, but specialists with the right experience and with the right willingness and vision to deliver quality of space and urban development at all levels. I'm very glad here to be together after the pandemic. For many of us traveling internationally is the first time. Happy to come to Nepal. When the IGUTP, the international guidelines, were formulated in the run-up of Quito and the new urban agenda, there was a great optimism, especially from Asia Pacific, about the positive potential of urbanization, lifting people, millions and millions of people out of poverty, and the potential of urbanization to develop national economies. And now there are more clouds. The pandemic and the pandemic recovery, climate and resilience, new disasters in Asia Pacific, as for instance in Pakistan recently, energy and food insecurity, financial and/or political challenges in quite a number of countries, and of course, as a result of all these challenges, new poverty, new inequality, and increased social and spatial inequality. So I look forward to find here in this discussion for the next 2 days a new optimism among urban planners to deliver visions, strategies, and policies for sustainable recovery and urban development, and visions that can support political commitment. For the line ministries, I hope for your participation, for all participants and from Nepal, I hope for your participation and voice on these issues in the second UN Habitat Assembly in June and in the Asia Pacific Urban Forum in October in Korea. For the planners and the stakeholders, really let's think hard about the results and recommendations need to be from this meeting. Recommendations for Nepal, for the region, please communicate with Madame Nolisa, but also for UN Habitat and the Habitat Assembly at the global level. For the local and provincial delegates, thank you for coming together here, and your voice is really critical, and make sure that it remains there in the further consolidations and communications such as World Urban Forum and the UN Habitat Assembly. We really need you to sit around the table. MLIT, Japanese colleagues, I look forward that we set out new collaborations for SPP. The 5th meeting is always a nice benchmark to reach. So let's plan for SPP for the future, that it can carry what we achieved in the next 2 days and achieve more on these results. I thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to a very good conference for the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, guest of this session, Mr. Bruno Dercon, for your insights as Office in Charge, UN Habitat Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific.